Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our Ask Dr. Tam webinar. Our program will be recorded and found on our YouTube channel in the coming week. We bring to you tonight a legend in dementia training, Dr. Tam Cummings. Dr. Tam, as she is known in the dementia community, is a practicing gerontologist who has devoted her professional career to educating both professional and family caregivers. In 2009, she founded the Dementia Association with the mission to inspire, educate, and empower dementia caregivers. At Anthem, we utilize her transformative work, including the Itty Bitty Dementia book, in our daily conversations with families of those with dementia. If you haven't already received your copy of the Itty Bitty Dementia book, you can pick one up at your nearest Anthem community. Families, professionals, and caregivers, it is a great honor for me to present to you tonight Dr. Tam.
Yay! Hello, everybody. I hope everybody had as good a holiday as you could have. They don't always have to be the same. It's okay. But I hope you did have a good holiday. It's going to be a good year. In Texas, we're preparing for snow and ice, which is rarer for us than it is for some of y'all. So I'm ready to go. And we're going to go through some questions that have been sent in and common questions that people ask. And we'll go from there. So, Chris, I'm ready if you are.
All right. Well, actually, I'm going to ask the questions.
Okay. Nicole, I'm ready if you are.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody who sent in questions. Also, if you have questions throughout, you can add some into the chat. This will be a little bit more informal than some of our others. We don't have an actual deck slide today. We're just going to be able to get all the great advice from Dr. Tam. So the first question was, my father has been in memory care for the last couple of weeks. He was a highly active and independent person. When my wife or cousin comes to see him, he is happy and does ask how I am doing. When I see him or speak to him, he becomes very agitated and tells me, "Let's go home. You're taking me home." What should I do?
Well, it sounds like you're doing a lot of things really, really right. And it also sounds like you're actually separating out very social behaviors that he's doing and marital behaviors that he is doing. So, for example, when you're married, and even if you're having a bad fight, if your family walks in, everybody stops fighting, puts on their happy face, and socially is appropriate. And now when they leave, the fighting may come back around. But you're seeing a couple of things. You're seeing him react socially to people that he knows, and he may or may not actually know them completely, or they may just be so friendly to him that he overcompensates with his social skills to hide the fact that he doesn't actually know who they are, just because the disease is progressing and memory goes backwards. But he does know you, and he knows that you have power and authority. And because he's frustrated and doesn't understand that he has a medical need that requires him to be in care, his obvious first logical thing is to say to you, "You need to take me home." And the way that we respond to that, and we're always going to respond to that, is, "I would love to, but the doctor says you have to be here." And well, I want to see the doctor. We'll tell the nurse to make sure that you get on to see the doctor. And if for some reason your husband does run into the doctor, the doctors are in on this. They're going to say, "Well, I need you to stay here just a little bit longer." But another thing is to think about, when you come to see him, come with a plan. And the plan would be like, "I've brought you your favorite slice of pie, and I thought we'd have this pie, and I wanted to make sure I gave you this little treat. And oh my goodness, I've got to run because I have to go do blah, blah, blah." And the other side of that is, because you know you've got to run, you're going to make arrangements with the staff caregiver when you come in to let that caregiver know, "I'm only going to be here 30 minutes. We're going to have a piece of pie. We may dance around his room. We're going to do whatever, but please come and get him in 30 minutes." And they'll set their alarm and come back and take him. And then there's not such a disparaging breakup. But any complaint about, "Why am I here? And I want you to take me home," is always countered with, "I would love to, but the doctor says you have to stay." And for now, this line tends to work on this generation. It'll be difficult and different when my generation comes through, because we'll just say, give us another doctor. But for now, that's really about the best redirection we have for that. And the other thing is, I know that that has to hurt. And I know that that has to feel like a kick in the gut. And it can go so far as to make you feel, do they even realize how sick he actually is? How come after all this good care and love I've given him, he doesn't recognize my sacrifice? So that's certainly, those behaviors can bring up an incredible amount of intense emotion. But the reality is, your loved one is in placement because their brain requires it to be able to continue. They require it. And for you to be able to survive, they require it. So you're watching social stuff, and you're watching how a husband and wife speak to each other when no one else is around and one of them's mad. Does that make sense, Nicole?
Does, yes. I
Okay.
think that's helpful. So there's another part to that question, or kind of that story. He then begins with his thoughts of people are calling him and asking for money when this is not the case. He has things to take care of, and I need to get him home.
The things to do and got to take care of and need to get him home. That is very much the presentation of sundowning behavior in men. Women need to leave and go see their babies, go take care of their children. Men need you to take them because they've got work to do. They've got stuff to do. So he's following a lifelong pattern, because you have to realize, little boys realize by the age of 3 or 4, they were supposed to make a living and take care of their wife and family. So with men, we very much get that driven and have to go thing. What was the first part, Nicole?
He has thoughts of people are calling him and asking for money.
Oh, yeah. He's he's easily reliving what he's watching on television if he's seeing any kind of commercials, because there are all sorts of commercials that are telling seniors to beware, and those commercials are placed on a lot of the channels that we use for in memory care. So he could be hearing that. He could just be telling you something that sounds scary to him, because he might be somehow inferring that if he tells you bad things are happening here, then you'll want to take him home. Another thing is, it is very common in stage 5 of the disease to do all of the behaviors you've said so far. But one of the very common things is to say that somebody's stealing from me, somebody's trying to get money from me. A lot of times it's the family, or neighbors, or someone they've seen. And so it's just a confusion in the brain of what's functioning and what doesn't work anymore and isn't there anymore. So it's just a confusion of multiple different things that you and I run into, and his brain is doing its best to make it logical. So we don't understand why they accuse families or tell us that people are stealing from them when they're not. We believe that it's just a behavior that happens because their brain just can't figure out where money is, where their purse is, where their wallet is, what banks mean anymore, but they still know the term money. And so then you go back to your analogy of the brain as a file cabinet, and they're going back to childhood. And at childhood, you knew money did stuff, but you didn't have a concept of it. And so to give you an idea, during the holidays, I have dozens of great nieces and nephews. And for the ones under a certain age, instead of giving them one single bill, I give them a stack of ones, and they just think they've got all the money in the world. So we don't know if it's sort of a childlike not understanding of money, or if it's that behavior where they blame the family member for taking money, or they blame non-existent people for taking money. So you could be seeing sundowning, you could be seeing stage 5 behavior of, I don't know where the money is, but you're here, so you must have taken it. Was that helpful, Nicole?
It was. It was. Okay. So, any advice if the family tends to trigger some of these behaviors when they come to visit? How would they handle these questions and actions when they do come to visit? If they're kind of the person that is the trigger?
That is really hard because sometimes you can be such a trigger that, as difficult as it is, you may just not need to see them until they pass through this. Remember, every behavior is going to eventually go away because the brain continues to be damaged. So, another way to look at it is to come in with a plan, and that plan is to really pay attention to your own behavior. Because socially, we begin to ask questions, Nicole, and there are questions that I'm supposed to answer, but I don't know how to answer them anymore. And it's coming in and spending too much time with this person. We know that structure works best for people with dementia. That's why memory care and activities are set up the way they are, because we know that structure helps dementia. It doesn't slow it, but it somehow helps the mood by using socialization and changing activities. Right, Nicole? Makes sense?
Yes.
So we know that by doing those certain things, we're able to be more beneficial to this person. We can have conflict arise when their loved one comes because, without being aware of it, the loved one has an abrupt voice, or they're anxious and frightened and annoyed. So the person with dementia will pick up on that behavior. It may not have been a good relationship. He may have been very overbearing anyway. We certainly see people who've had abuse. So, all the things that happen to humans who now have dementia. And so there can be just a number of different parameters, but I would look at, what is my behavior when I go to visit? Am I approaching him from the front to give him the best opportunity to see me? Am I coming in full of happiness with a treat? I mean, you can't discount what a great thing food is in humans' lives. And we know they love sweets, so we're going to bring them his favorite sweet. We're going to limit the time we're there to honestly, when I first moved my loved one in, I'm looking for you to limit the time to what you can bear, which may be 10 minutes. But 10 minutes is okay because you still have to go back and take care of yourself. And so you want to look at how much time you're spending. As a general rule, really don't want to spend more than 30 minutes if you can help it, because that's the amount of time they can stay focused in that particular span. Now, saying that, Nicole, I've known people that come in and have 30 minutes at breakfast, 30 minutes at lunch, and 30 minutes at dinner. I've known people that come in the evening to get their loved one ready for dinner. They sit in the room and watch a TV show with them and sort of put them to bed, and that's their routine. I mean, everybody does something different. But what we don't want to do to your loved one is have you continue to be their caregiver while they're there. So, to back up, look at what you're doing while you're there. How long are you staying? What's on the agenda? Because you've got to bring the agenda. They have brain damage. They can't think of what to do while you're there. So plan to come. You could come and do Valentine cards. You can come and record emails or voicemails for family members. You can come with a small set amount of time, make arrangements with the caregiver. Then there's not that kernuffle when you try to leave, and that horrible feeling it leaves you with, thinking that your loved one is aching when you leave.
Thank you. I think that's helpful. I know I always bring a treat when I go to visit my dad, so that definitely works.
It's a good thing. You're a good daughter, Nicole. Another thing, Nicole, that I know you and I, Jamie and Chris, we see this all the time, is you come to visit your loved one, and they've been very social with the aunt and the cousin and the niece, but you come to visit them and they tell you how much they hate the place, how everybody's mean to them, how bad things are happening, the food is terrible, and you go away feeling sick at your stomach and questioning yourself. And what you don't know is your loved one, as soon as you leave, goes right back into activities and goes right back to playing and cleans their plate every meal, plus all the treats that come around during the day. So it is normal for them to say things to you that can be upsetting. And just check with the staff, and you will find that an overwhelming number of times, as soon as you leave the community space, your loved one goes back into activities and goes back to being busy and social. That you've seen that, right, Nicole?
Oh, we see that all the time. Yep. We hear that, especially about not eating.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're in the clean plate club.
Mm-hmm. I'm a member of that club myself. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is, how should I handle aggressive or agitation when they're happening in the moment?
Well, if it's in the moment and they're not in danger, I'm going to immediately step out of the circle. I'm going to get out of their vision. I'm going to get away from them. Um, they're not in control. And so I don't want to move in a way that gives the opportunity for them to strike me or hurt me, because number one, they could hurt me. These people walk 20 miles a day. They may be old and fragile, but that doesn't mean they're not still very strong. So I don't want to get hurt. I don't want them to get hurt hurting me. So and I want this outburst, this sudden physical or verbal agitation, I want it to go away as quickly as possible. And the fastest thing to do is for me to get back out of their way, because I'm going to be the focus of that anger. So then in that moment that I've backed away and I can see that they're calm now, when I approach, I'm probably going to bring back something nice. Cheese and crackers, toast and jelly. It doesn't have to be anything big, but again, food is a great redirector. It just is. It's just how humans are hardwired. And I'm going to then look at all the things that were going on around my loved one when this outburst occurred, because we treat all behavior as having meaning. And did the behavior occur, Nicole, because I ran up to them too fast and that person's naturally a fighter, and so they got ready to fight me because I scared them? Did I talk too fast? Did I run sentence on after sentence and then that just made them agitated? Am I already agitated? Are they picking up a tone in my voice where I'm short? Because even people with brain damage can tell you're annoyed, and people with brain damage can feel humiliated, and those are not going to have good outcomes for you. So I'm going to look at what was my behavior that I was doing when this occurred, because when we break down behaviors, there is certainly a pattern. 50% of the behaviors in people with dementia, and on average, a person with dementia has one behavioral episode a day. So 50% of the behaviors are untreated chronic pain. Then we have 15% anxiety, 15% depression related, and then the remaining 20% is the approach of the caregiver. So I can't control their brain, but the first thing I can do is control my approach. Then I use the medical tools. And remember, those medical tools are on the website. Those tools are available if you just Google them. But the first one we're going to look at is PAINAD. And that's PAINAD in all capital letters, because I already know through research 50% of the behaviors are untreated chronic pain. I had a call today, Nicole, from a woman whose her daughter said she just suddenly began to scream and scream and scream and scream. And so now they've put her on quite a large dosage of an antipsychotic, but nobody checked her for pain. And the one thing that would cause a person to scream out loud constantly is a very high level of pain. So each one of us has a pain filter, Nicole, that you've been taught to use since you were a little girl. You begin to be taught as a human to suppress pain, not talk about pain, don't complain about your pain. No one cares about your pain. But by the time you've reached your 70s, you're in your eighth decade of life. Your body's had a lot of wear and tear on it. In your 80s, you're now in your ninth decade of life. In your 90s, you're in your 10th decade of life. The body is old. Things hurt. Arthritis doesn't hurt occasionally, it hurts every day. And then when snowstorms and ice storms come, it hurts worse. So bursitis hurts, tendonitis hurts. Ladies who've had pregnancies, there can be pain from there. Any broken bone, any back pain. The largest pain in America is back pain. That's a human thing. So you first do the PAINAD, because that's the first thing we're going to check before we ever put somebody on an antipsychotic. You want to check their pain. So you simply use the tool PAINAD, which stands for Pain Assessment in Advanced Dementia. The second one is, remember, pain behaviors, depression behaviors, and anxiety behaviors look very, very much alike. But I know pain's the biggest one. So first I'm going to rule out pain. Then I'm going to use the Cornell scale for depression in dementia. And remember, all of these tools are observational for the caregiver. because your loved one has brain damage. They can't truthfully answer a question, not because they're dishonest people, but because of brain damage. So I'm going to do the Cornell scale for depression and dementia. And then I'm going to do the Hamilton anxiety scale so that I can take these tools back to my physician and get my person better treatment. And when all this is done, I'm still going to look at how did I approach? How was I moving? What was going on around me? And it can be very unusual things, Nicole. You can have a person with dementia have a very aggressive outburst because the room is too dark or because the room is too light. Now, we tend to err towards the side of having the room be more light because they're already having vision issues. But it's very, very subtle. Somebody too cold can have outburst. So you look at their environment, how we're moving, pain, anxiety, depression, and you begin to see what works best with your loved one. And probably some of you saw things during the holidays when there was suddenly too much noise, too many visitors, too many people, and you may have seen behaviors then, and that was just the brain being overwhelmed by the stimuli going on around it. Did that make sense, Nicole?
It did. That was very helpful. Thank you. So we have a question in the chat. It says, my mother has dementia, but she is very functional. She is very much a person who lives on routines. Knowing that those with dementia respond well with routines and the familiar, is it best to keep schedules consistent, getting up, going to bed at the same time every day, etc.?
Well, we're consistent, but we also understand age. I mean, I sort of believe, Nicole, you make it to a certain age. If today you don't want to get out of bed till 9 because you're snuggly, maybe you're having a dream that makes sense, you know, then we're not going to get you up till 9. But we're still going to maintain that routine throughout the day of getting you up and moving through. But then, Nicole, that always has to be balanced with, as the disease progresses, the sleep pattern of the person changes. So I think it's you guys keep it very individualized, and we look at what works best with the person. Some people are very early risers, but Nicole, how many people have you met in your career that didn't get out of bed till noon? But that was their routine. And that's really the routine we're trying to follow, with the understanding those routines change as the disease progresses.
Okay. So you talked a lot about sleep. The second part of it is consistent sleeping schedules and a full night's sleep beneficial to those with dementia?
It changes. So the person goes from their normal routine sleep pattern that humans tend to follow, which is we go to sleep when it gets dark, we wake up when it gets light. But due to changes that occur in the body with the circadian rhythm, no longer running in the same frequency with all of the cells of the body, we know that that's part of why their sleep pattern begins to change. The type of dementia also determines how the sleep pattern will change, but it's not at all unusual for a person with dementia in stage 6 to be able to stay awake for 36 to 72 hours. And there's nothing we can do to get this person to go to sleep. We just have to stay awake and stay with them. And that's actually the stage where the 36-hour day term came from. And then stage 7 people, bedbound people, they may sleep 20 hours a day. And again, this is the body's reaction and the progression of the disease, and there's not much we can do about that. So for a while, they will stay on their normal routine. And when they come into memory care, it becomes a very individualized part of the care plan of trying to get people up in the general timeline that they got up. But if somebody wants to sleep a little bit later today, that's something that's always going to be respected. So it's part of the disease process, and you can't keep the brain and body on the normal schedule you and I would stay on.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we require awake staff 24 hours a day. Right, Nicole?
Right.
Got to have
Exactly.
somebody up to play. Absolutely.
Exactly. Okay, so the next one is talking about the importance of hydration. So I want to confirm that keeping those with dementia properly hydrated is very helpful in keeping their cognitive abilities at the max and to maintain the best memory they can, especially short-term memory. Can you elaborate or discuss?
Well, short-term memory isn't determined by hydration. It's determined by a piece of the brain called hippocampus. And when you begin to see repetition either in questions and movements and stories and the same thing over and over again, that tells you the hippocampus no longer exists in their brain. There's now a space there where that piece of the brain was. But in terms of giving them the best shot today and having the best function in their brain is helping them stay hydrated. But does that mean if they're hydrated tomorrow, they'll be the same they were today? And the answer is no, because more and more of the brain dies every day. The disease doesn't stop. So it's not that you're going to see a change in that, but by having the person properly hydrated, that helps us keep them at their peak best for that day. It doesn't halt the disease, slow the disease, or stop the disease. And then we're always working against the hydration not having the same effect on their body that it does on you and me. So hydration doesn't mean I don't get UTIs. People with dementia get urinary tract infections because of brain damage. So we do the best we can to make sure that we are hydrating and monitoring liquid intake throughout the day. But we also are working with a person who will eventually develop UTIs no matter how much fluid we're able to get into them.
I'm going to go back to a behavior question. How can I redirect repetitive behaviors or questions?
You just, when they're stuck in a loop, you can't redirect. You just have to continue to be pleasant. So we go back to the 96-year-old Air Force colonel. I drove back from the neurologist one day, and for 45 minutes, we had the same conversation. And the conversation was, so are you married? Yes, I am. Retired colonel, just like you. Were you ever at the Pentagon? Yes, sir. Last duty station. Do you have any kids? No, sir. I have dogs. Isn't it a lovely day? And then 5 seconds later, the very same conversation. And Nicole, when this was happening, I actually thought, wow, this is happening. And I understand what he's doing. And I'm not at all angry or upset or trying to redirect him to talk about something else. I recognize he is indicating his hippocampus no longer exists. He is indicating that he has great and gracious social skills. And he simply is not able to register because the piece isn't there anymore, that he and I just had this conversation. So all I did was my answers got a little more elaborate. I didn't just have a dog. I had a miniature schnauzer whose name was Truman, who was the smartest dog in the world and actually did military commands. And it went from, isn't it a lovely day, to, oh my gosh, look at the blue bonnets, look at the paintbrushes. This is the most gorgeous day. My goodness, look at the blue on that lake. And all I did was increase my answers and enjoy that he was demonstrating a social skill. He didn't intend to drive me crazy, although I know for a family member, 9,000 times today can drive you crazy. But then that also brings us back to food is a great redirector. Okay, so understand they're in a loop. Understand it's not happening on purpose. Go with the conversation, be as pleasant as possible, because if I get agitated, they can tell that I'm agitated and they're going to respond by being agitated. So just be as pleasant as you can. And your best redirection is usually going to be food, although pets are a good redirection too, which is why we have those lovely little stuffed animals that just work wonderful and don't hurt anybody. But anyway, did that help, Nicole?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you. Okay. Next question is, how can I encourage my loved one to eat or bathe or take medications?
Well, those are just all part of care. And we use a rule of just continuing to come back around and continuing to come back around and continuing to circle back around. So there's a number of different things that could be happening. Nicole, I might not be able to get you to bathe because when I was talking to you, I was talking too quickly and I seemed very pleasant. And I said, Nicole, how about a bath? You want to get a bath? Baths are good. Let's go have a bath. Bath will be great. We'll have a bath. We'll get a bath. It'll be great. Get a bath, bath. Till I got you in there and you realized, oh, she's trying to take my clothes off. And it's cold in here. And I don't want to be cold. I'm already cold all the time because my brain is damaged. My body heat's not temperature is not correct. So I'm already cold. Now she's trying to take my clothes off. Why is she trying to take my clothes off? You and I've been taught always not to let people take our clothes off. And so there's a whole, that's why as professionals, we have a whole preparation we do to give someone a bath as successfully as possible. Second part of the bath question, Nicole, is how dirty is your person? They're not out working on the highway. And other than incontinent care, there just may be days where the best you can do is a bed bath. You may only get one armpit clean today, but you got one armpit clean. And so there's a methodology for us to be able to successfully bathe a person and make them feel as comfortable as possible. And that starts with we don't talk a whole lot about what we're fixing to go do. Because the whole time I was talking to Nicole, I was pleasant, but I was going so fast. Her social skill kicked in and she just kept agreeing with me until she realized we were going to do something that wasn't pleasant for her. If I don't have the bathroom warm, going to be a lot harder to get me undressed. If I don't have everything there and ready to go, it's going to get me undressed. And then you have to remember we have a primitive instinct about water that's kind of, we don't like water. Being wet makes us cold, and being wet and cold can make us sick, and wet and cold and sick can make us die. So there's sort of a primitive brainstem thing there. Another component of bathing is the water needs to be about the temperature for a baby's bath because our skin feels temperature differently. And Nicole, that wonderful, invigorating spa shower, that can feel like 1,000 stinging bees to a person who has dementia. And so I'm certainly not going to want to go bathe there. And then very difficult to put me on a Hoyer lift and lift me up and put me over in a bathtub that's bubbling, because where I grew up, big round things that have bubbly water in them mean it's boiling. And so it's a very unique skill, but a lot of it is realizing this is no different than bathing a child. Children don't really understand how to bathe, Nicole, until about the age of 8 or 9. Then they know how to safely run hot water with cold water to make the right warm temperature water, how to get water to stay, how to leave, how to use a washcloth, soap, shampoo, conditioner. You're talking about somebody, this is our most complex activity of daily living. And so your person, I've had families tell me, oh, he goes in there, he showers. And I asked the wife, well, how many times do you wash his towels? And she realized he just went in there and turned on water because he didn't know the other steps to take. It's actually over 4 dozen steps to be able to take a bath by yourself. And a person with dementia can't do those. And when I can't do them, Nicole, I'm going to give you pushback and tell you, I don't want to do this. And you'll eventually leave me alone because it's very challenging for a family caregiver to bathe a person at home. What was the next part?
It was just kind of in general talking about
Bathing.
bathing, eating, and medications.
Okay, so medications, didn't grow up taking medications. So this is a new and unusual thing to me. And people with dementia can have increased paranoia because their world doesn't make sense anymore. And so, Nicole, if I am having paranoia and I've never taken medicine, I don't know what this stuff is. And oh, by the way, some medicines taste really bad in your mouth. And medicine doesn't necessarily make you happy or make you feel good. I can be so suspicious that I'm not going to let you give me medicine. Eventually, I may have trouble with medicine because of not being able to swallow safely. And you and I both know they're pills we refer to as horse pills because they're so large. So it's again a matter of redirection. The timeline cue in medication is that if I'm supposed to take a medication at noon, I have a 1 hour time on either side of noon. So I can actually begin to try to get this person their medicine from 11 till 1, and the medicine still falls in the guideline of when it's supposed to be given. So I'm going to keep redirecting. I've seen families, Nicole, have great luck with, as soon as you take your medicine, we're going to have some ice cream. And same thing for a child. I'm going to take my medicine so I can get my ice cream. So they use a treat to try to get through that, and that may work for a while. And then sometimes, Nicole, we know you have to go to liquid medicines. We use certain medicines that are crushed or sprinkled into food, and it's something that you can talk to your physician about or talk to the nurses at the community about, because they are the gurus of getting medicine into a person who doesn't want to take their medicine. And then the other one was eating. Eating, when you think about your loved one, think about how a baby started. A baby started by being fed a liquid diet. Then the baby was given a pureed diet. Then the baby was given a mechanically chopped up diet, chopped up food. Then they were given finger foods. Then they were given a spoon and food that was cut up. Then a fork with food that was cut up. And then you begin to learn a fork and a knife. So it's not as simple as we tend to think of it. And we think of it as simple just because we do it without, we use a part of our brain for that type of memory. So that procedural memory kicks in and we don't realize how many steps there actually are to eating or to how food is prepared. So the normal trajectory from eating was liquid up to solid foods that I could cut and pierce with a fork and bring to my mouth and chew and swallow myself. And now we're going backwards in time. The second part is we not only have to know how a person's food is to be prepared in order for them to safely chew and swallow the food for as long as possible, but we also have to remember things like sweeteners to help a person continue to eat food. We have to remember that feeding tubes do not work. People with dementia will pull those out. Have to remember that it takes an hour to assist a person with dementia to eat. If the person's on pureed food, we never stir the pureed food together, and we make sure the food is tasted so that it is properly seasoned. Nothing tastes as bad to humans as food without enough salt in it. So the food is tasted, it is seasoned, and then it's kept separate so that it's not all stirred together. And as your person goes through the decline because of brain damage, eventually the brain can't tell the body how to chew or swallow food. But as they go through this, the staff is trained to be able to observe them. And when they notice that there has now been a change, and Nicole, the change could be that they're now chipmunking their food. They're not swallowing it. They're just stuffing it in their cheeks. The change can be that they chew and chew and chew and chew and chew the food, and then they spit it out on their plate. The change can be that they're choking on food. So the doctor will get a speech therapist to come out and do a swallow study with them. They'll feed them a meal and see how they swallow, and then they'll make the recommendation for food. But you're going to see how food is prepared and how food is taken by your loved one, from being able to feed themselves with a fork, to feeding themselves with a spoon, to eating finger foods, to now being assisted with their meal. Just know that we plan for each of those meals to be about an hour to give that person time to take their meal in, because everything's moving slower now. Did that make sense?
It does. Can you speak a little bit on how taste buds change with the disease process and aging?
Well, it's not so much that your taste buds changed, although as you age, you may have burned off some of your taste buds if you're a big hot pepper person. So there's normal aging in the tongue, but it's not your taste buds, it's brain damage. So the brain is not able to taste all of the foods that you and I can, because that brain tissue is not there anymore. And in most people, what they're going to have the greatest taste and flavoring for are sweets. And that's why we use so many sweet things to flavor foods or to help them get extra calories.
Very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I
Um,
shocked you with a short answer.
yeah. Is it true that macular degeneration and dementia cause hallucinations?
Um, well, with macular degeneration and in dementia, okay, so a hallucination is something you see, hear, or smell that's not real. The most common hallucination in Lewy bodies is they see children, bug spiders, rats, or snakes, bad people coming to get them. They see their spouse or their caregiver having sex everywhere. Uh, People with Parkinson's tend to have a hallucination, with Parkinson's dementia, have a hallucination that's more of a double vision. So it's a little bit different. Instead of one dog, they see two dogs. Their hallucinations, oddly enough, Nicole, are thought to be more related to the dopamine medicine that a person with Parkinson's would take. And then in Alzheimer's and any of the other dementias, a hallucination can occur, but the family has to figure out, are we truly witnessing a hallucination, or are we witnessing a perception issue? So a perception issue is you're sitting in your living room, Nicole, you're looking out the window, a car drives by, the car makes window light shadow move across your window. Your brain is a 3-pound brain. It looks at that and goes, car shadow window, big deal. And you don't even remember that it happened. It didn't even record it. But to a person with Alzheimer's having a hallucination or having a perception issue, they might be sitting next to you looking out that same window, car, shadow, light, and they think somebody's over there. That's a perception issue. They saw the movement, the brain couldn't figure out what it was, so it thought somebody was there. That's the most common thing that they would think. A hallucination is usually going to be several minutes long. In Lewy body folks, they're actually hours long, those hallucinations are. And the hallucination, the person may be aware that they're having a hallucination. For example, I've had people say, I saw a child in here and I know there's not a child in here. That's usually somebody a little earlier in the disease. But later on, they may see things, and you have to always question, because this is important for the doctor, and the doctor didn't witness what you witnessed. You've got to look at what they were looking at and see, is there actually a hallucination there? Did they really see something? Or in the case of macular degeneration, because their vision is impaired, was that a perception issue? They didn't correctly perceive the environment activity around them. And in the case of Alzheimer's, same thing. Did they actually misperceive the environment, or did an actual hallucination occur? Another common perception is the big screen TVs. In the right camera angle, a human on a big screen TV is life-sized. So a person with Alzheimer's may tell you there's people standing over there talking, and they're actually not able to differentiate that those are people on a television. So you just have to determine which one it is, because the hallucination could be dementia, have a dementia causation. It could be an indicator of an infection or delirium or a urinary tract infection. It could be an indicator that there's been a stroke, or it could be part of the disease process.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Next question is in the chat. It says, my dad is doing well in memory care, but now that mom is still at home and alone, she is starting to shut down and get really depressed. She really doesn't want to do a lot and argues about even wanting to take a shower. She is still pretty sound mind. She refuses to go anywhere except to see dad once a week. And she's refusing any kind of mental help. Any suggestions?
Well, you're describing either depression or you're describing a dementia process. Now, I lean more towards depression because of grieving that your dad is gone, especially if it was a happy marriage. Um, so you would have depression and grief happening because of that. Remember, as family members, you're grieving at a post-death grief level for your loved one. So your mother's depression and grief would be quite high because the person who was your dad isn't there anymore. And I think a lot of times we don't realize people of all ages grieve, and people of all ages can have depression. So for your mom, I would look at the geriatric depression scale. And you can give her the test, or you can look at the 15 questions short version. Um, and it's the geriatric depression scale. You can look at that and answer yes or no, and then compare it to the score sheet. And if she scores 5 or more, that's a positive test for depression. And then I would want to really try to talk to her or talk to her doctor and see if you can make some headway there. But that would make perfect sense to me that she's having depression. But the other side of it is you have two older parents, and a lot of times we get so focused on the parent who's obviously ill that we miss the other parent's ill as well. It's just that their dementia is not as advanced as the first parent. So you've got a couple of things to do for homework. One is to look at the geriatric depression scale and see if you're seeing depression. And, if you want to, I'll call your mom. I'll talk to her. I don't mind. We can set up something there and see if we can help her that way. Because a lot of times, just a professional who's not you can get mom to do something that you won't do. that she won't do, but I would start with the geriatric depression test. If you're feeling comfortable, ask her if she'll let you give her the test. If you're not feeling comfortable to ask her that, just grade her by what you know, how you know her. And if you're looking at depression, remember it's called the geriatric depression scale because the only place it says the word depression is in the title. We call it the GDS. And the reason is your mom's in a category of a generation that didn't believe in depression. Depression is just lazy people who need to get up and try harder. And it's actually a lack of serotonin interacting correctly with the other chemicals of the brain. And when you mention she's not bathing, a person who begins to lose care for their physical self, not brushing the teeth, keeping the hair clean, clean clothes, all of those things, not bathing and showering, those are all indicators of both depression and dementia. So I think you need to just do some little paperwork on your mom and look at her and see which one of those fits her better, and then kind of think about where to go from there. But a lot of times it would be trying to talk to her own physician. And a lot of our physicians are really good about listening that you're a concerned daughter, because how else would the doctor know this information? Right? And they want to treat your loved one. Did that make sense, Nicole?
It does. So you would recommend her calling the mom's physician and having that conversation prior to a doctor's visit?
If they will.
Mhm.
I've run into physicians that realize dementia's out there and depression's out there, and we need to take care of our older population. And I've run into others that say, absolutely not, I won't talk to you about your mother. If that's the case, then I would fill out the geriatric depression scale and I would go with my mother to the doctor. And you know, when you walk in that room, Nicole, and they slide your chart in there,
Mhm.
or if they don't slide your chart and it's all electronic, you've still got a piece of paper that you want to hand the doctor before the doctor comes in. And so when I'm with, if I was with a person, I would get them situated in the waiting room. And then I would say, I have to go to the bathroom. I would step out of the room, wait until the doctor came, and give the doctor the test results and say, this is what I'm concerned about, because I can't do it in front of my mother. That's just going to make her mad. And then,
Mhm.
Nicole, remember when we're at the doctor with our parent, we don't sit side by side. I sit back behind you so that I can go, or because I certainly don't want to insult you in front of the doctor by saying, no, mom doesn't bathe at all. We need to do something about this. You need to make her bathe. I've just insulted you in front of a doctor, Nicole, and the ride home is not going to be fun. But
Right.
if I've given the doctor, in your mom's case, the Bristol Activities of Daily Living scale and the geriatric depression scale, and let the doctor know dad moved into a community and I think mom misses him so bad. I'd also look at, is there another way to increase her visits? Because once a week seems uh, maybe not as frequently as she needs. She may need to visit him more often. So a couple of avenues maybe to help you get started on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
This is another question in the chat. It says, my mom has stage 6 dementia and has been living in a memory care for 1 year. About a month ago, mom was eating with a spoon and then all of a sudden froze and said she didn't know what to do next.
Mhm.
I helped her through that moment, and then she was all right and able to finish her snack with the spoon independently. What can I expect next, and how long does it typically take for people to forget how to use utensils altogether?
It's usually you're about there. If they're in stage 6, you're just almost there. And what you're seeing is very normal. It's just that you're so observant, you caught it. I mean, I've had lunch with a gentleman who could walk to his, we were in his home, walk to his dining table, sit down for the meeting. We had our little meal, and at the end, he couldn't remember how to push back from the chair and stand up. So because you're paying such good attention, you're going to see where those glitches and hiccups start that downward spiral. And so as she begins to lose the ability to use the spoon, that's when Nicole's teams are going to go to finger foods, because and we don't hand them children's food. We hand them food cut into finger-sized portions so they can pick it up with their hands and eat it. And that's how we're going to progress with her as she can no longer do it. Remember, stage 6 is called severe dementia. There's only 7 stages. Most people don't survive to stage 7. So if you're seeing the first of this decline, I would just prepare that she's getting further to the end of the disease. And as she loses the ability to self-feed, there will be others there to take care of her.
Okay, good. This was a question that had been sent in previously.
Mhm.
So it's a family that is currently looking for memory care, and the child who's looking for the memory care knows that this particular community is the best place for my loved one, but my family is pressuring me to choose another community because it's closer to where they live and they would visit. What should
By
I
all
tell
means.
them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Do what those people want to do. Seriously, you're the person. It's got to be closest to you. I've known Nicole for a while. We've been in this business for a long time. I can't tell you how many people had a loved one moved because that person lived a block away from the community and they were going to visit the whole time. And 3 years later, they'd never once stepped foot in the building. It's your person. They need to be closest to you. If they want to come visit, God bless them. They need to come and visit. This is not about their convenience. This is about your convenience and what is best for you and your loved one. Does that make sense, Nicole?
It does, yes.
Yeah, we got to support you. That this isn't for them. This is for you and your loved one and what is best for you because Nicole will tell you, I'll tell you, Jamie, Chris, everybody on here will tell you, those calls come at 3 in the morning and you got to be able to be where you're closest, right?
Yeah.
So let's take care of you.
Okay.
And I'll tell them
Um,
that. Give me their phone number, Nicole. I'll tell them.
you're going to be getting a lot of calls.
Yep.
Okay, so this next one is kind of that question we've talked about in some previous webinars, but it's always good to bring up again because it is something that we hear quite a bit from families. But it's how do I get over the guilt of moving my loved one into a community? I promised I never would.
That's a great question, Nicole. I mean, we all know the line in our wedding vow for better or worse in sickness and in health. And I believe that every one of us has been married or with someone and at some point we've promised, I will never put you somewhere. But Nicole, you and I both know that in making that promise, no one ever thought something like this could happen. You never did. And so it's not a promise that wasn't made in good faith. And I believe that if your loved one had their right mind, they would be horrified to know the stress and just the physical and emotional abuse that has happened to you as a result of the care and love that you have shown your loved one. And you've done such an extraordinary job. And it always, Nicole, leads me back to the brain cancer analogy. I mean, I have a slide that shows a person with brain cancer and a brain with dementia, and they're almost, you can't tell the difference between them. If it was brain cancer and the doctor said it is time to move your loved one to care, you would say, yes, it's time to move them to care. And thank God this care exists. Thank God I can afford it. Thank God these good people are here and they're going to take good care of my loved one. When it's dementia, because you and I were never taught what this disease meant, you have no idea how much worse it gets. You didn't know that. So this is not you backing out of a promise. This is learned guilt. So, Nicole, there's two kinds of guilt. There's earned guilt and learned guilt. Earned guilt is, Nicole, you did something bad and it was mean to me and you should feel guilty. Learned guilt is you feel guilty about something that happened to me as though you were the cause of it and you weren't the cause of it at all. You're not placing a loved one in care because you hate them and you don't love them. You're placing them in care because their medical needs now take priority and your physical health takes priority. And this is the only disease where the caregiver dies first. And it's because, Nicole, the average person has cancer 2 years, and 34% of cancers are terminal. So when a person is diagnosed with brain cancer, the clock is already ticking. Nobody told your families, the people that you and I work with, nobody told them that that clock's going to tick for 10 years, 15 years. And during that time, the care you do is just going to get worse and worse and worse. And the person with cancer knew they were sick, unless it was brain cancer. And even in the beginning, the brain cancer person knows they're sick because they have terrible headaches. Your person doesn't know they're sick, is suspicious, is paranoid, and finally requires medical care. And that's what you're doing. It's medical care. It's a decision that's the hardest decision to make. And you're making it out of love, not because you don't care. You're doing what you have to do for somebody who requires a level of care that a family cannot provide at home. And it's just it's horrible. And it's something that I would talk to. I think every family caregiver ought to get a free pass to go see a trauma therapist, because by the time you come in to meet a Nicole or me, you're already so far down the caregiving journey and you're already so exhausted and you're hearing different things from different people. And I had somebody today that's had a heart attack. And Nicole, her cardiologist said, "Oh, I think you can do care for him 6 more months at least." It's killing her. It's literally killing her. And a cardiologist who's a heart doctor, but not a caregiving specialist, said she could continue to do it. And she's going through the same thing. She feels so guilty. It's not something you're doing because you're bad. It's not something you're doing because you don't love this person. It's actually the opposite. And you're grieving. And we all know you're not supposed to make decisions when you're grieving, but you have to. And it's the only way that we know to get you through it. We're going to be there to support you, but I think talking to a trauma therapist would be great, because when the grief is to the point that it's causing overwhelming guilt and you're not able to move forward and make the medical decisions for you and your loved one, then it means that you're not in control anymore of your own self. And we need a person for you to talk to who can help you get back to how you used to be. But I wish I could say it's nothing to feel guilty about. I realize guilt is there, but the guilt is also tied up with grief. So we love the website grief.com. David Kessler has wonderful stuff on grief.com. And you can also find good stuff on grieving and on guilt in the caregiver on alzheimerssociety.uk. So there's some literature out there to help with that. But you're feeling normal things. It's just it can get overwhelming. And then you're not making the decisions, the hard decisions that are really based on a medical need. Did that make sense, Nicole?
It did. It did. And I think it's always good for people to hear that again, because that is such an important decision to make. And there is, I know, a lot of guilt that families go through with that. So thank you. One of the questions that kind of follows up to that is, when someone is making that move or transitioning to a memory care, what should the family kind of expect for that first day or that week, as they're moving their loved one in?
That you would have to answer that, Nicole. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, from an
what y'all do in the
emotional,
first.
I think it's more, from the family's, the caregiver standpoint.
So what I want the family to prepare themselves for is, this is very much the feeling of a funeral. And you feel a great sense of relief, which I think is very normal. Because you know that tonight that person is safe. There are a whole team of people watching out for them and taking care of them and doing everything they can to keep them comfortable and feeling as safe as possible and just as cozy as possible. And you know that you can sleep better tonight knowing that they're there. You can let go of the thought that they're going to go there and be bad and they're going to kick them out, because we take care of people with dementia. It's not just arbitrary. We take care of people with dementia, and people with dementia can have behaviors. And so that's not going to happen. But when you get home, Nicole, and you drive up in the driveway and you step back out, as you walk through the door, it will usually hit you that this is just like the funeral. They're not going to walk through that door anymore, and they're not going to be in that house anymore. And so it is a gut wrenching feeling that's hard to, I think, comprehend at times, because it's also mixed with so much relief. And then on top of that, Nicole, is how much exhaustion does this person have? So on the first day after your loved one is now signed in and they've walked you to the door and told you to go home and rest, I want to make sure when you go home, you have a nice meal that night. You need to plan that you're either going to listen to music, you're going to watch comedy, you're going to watch a favorite movie. Please don't watch murder shows. Please don't watch, 48 hours. Don't watch that 48-hour murder show. Don't watch that bad stuff. Don't watch drama. If you're a bubble bath person, have a bubble bath. If you're going to have a glass of wine, have a nice glass of wine. You have earned it. But make sure you do something for yourself that night. If you've got a good friend, be a good night for your girlfriend or your guy friend to come over, watch sports, watch a movie, do something. Realize you're going to have emotion, and it's going to be very up and down. And it's okay if you don't. Nicole, I certainly have met people who have grieved so much and have held on for so long that they seemed to realize once they left the building that day that they had made a move that they probably should have made quite a while sooner. But do prepare yourself that it's an emotional day. That first week, you really don't need to come back, because you really need to catch up on your rest and the things that you need to do to start feeling like yourself again. If you're worried, call. The nurse will go look at your loved one. Somebody in the community will go put their phone on and let you FaceTime and look at them. They're going to take care of you to help you as you go through this. But make a plan for your week. Nicole, I've had folks that called up girlfriends from high school and went off and had a weekend and didn't want to do it, drug their feet, and were so happy that they did, because those people know you so, so well. And make sure you have food that you like. This is not the time to go back home and start your diet, Nicole. Go back home that night. Be nice to yourself. Be good to yourself this week. Let the staff get to know your loved one. Let them see. Let your loved one acclimate. If you can't stand it, go over, but please don't stay all day. Okay, you're messing up our structured schedule that we've got going for your loved one. And the main reason is that you need to stay home and take care of yourself. That's the big one. But look for things to do that week. If it's to take up your hobby you haven't done in forever. I know somebody, Nicole, they went home and read 33 books.
Oh my gosh. Good
Said
for
she got
them.
her a warm quilt, made her a pot of tea, and she read for several days. But plan to have some stuff to do that night, a nice meal. Take care of yourself. You have gone on a long and hard journey, and you're almost at the end. Now I'm depressed.
I know. Um, there's one more question in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. My husband was diagnosed with MCI in 2015, then primary progressive dementia in 2018, but is in good health physically. What can I expect his progression to be in terms of losing the ability to eat, etc.? The progression has been very slow, but seems to be escalating. He's basically nonverbal and resistant to chatting by text or email.
So by primary progressive dementia, I'm assuming you mean primary progressive aphasia, a frontal temporal dementia. And if it is PPA, then the reason he's hesitant to text or chat is because the part of his brain that does language and words doesn't exist anymore. I mean, it's like asking a person with COPD, why don't they want to blow up balloons? And it's because their lungs don't work. So with the person with primary progressive aphasia, then it's because the piece of the brain that the pieces of the brain that do language and words don't exist. So trying to get him to do that is probably frustrating and upsetting for him. What was the next part of that? I got thrown by the primary progressive dementia.
It says, what can I expect his progression to be in terms of losing the ability to eat?
Oh, for most people, that's going to be as they move literally to the final part of life, but you'll see a slow decrease in the amount of food that a person is taking in. But you have to balance that with movement. So stage 6 people stay in movement all the time. That's why they lose 1/3 to 1/2 of their body weight, why there's such a dramatic change in stage 6. But a bedbound person in stage 7, a person who's totally bedbound, where the staff really does all of their movement and care, they only use about 300 or 400 calories a day. So it doesn't take many scoops of pudding or soup to actually get to 300 or 400 calories. So that sort of hangs them. They don't actually stop eating until the very, very end of life. With people with PPA, semantic dementia or logopenic variant, the other forms of PPA, they become more of a choking hazard as part of their specific disease. So you would stage your person using the FTD staging tool on it's in my website under the tools section on the front page, and you can stage your person there. Also go to the FTD website, which is THEAFTD.org. That's the Association Frontal Temporal Dementia.org. Click on what is FTD in the right corner menu, and then click on the FTDs, and you'll read what makes that particular dementia so much different from semantic or logopenic variant. You'll recognize immediately how your person's decline is or disease clinical features are different. And then you can see on the staging tool when you would expect to see that choking risk. But normally the choking risk for people with FTD, especially the PPA group, is going to be in about midway through stage 6. Chewing and swallowing becomes more and more difficult.
Thank you. Next one is, my father was living alone, running errands, banking, cooking, all for himself. The next day was suffering from vivid hallucinations, unable to hold a conversation, constantly telling me there are people in his house. No one was in his house, no UTI, no stroke, very healthy, but was diagnosed with, it says front dementia, but I'm thinking frontal temporal dementia, severe. How common is this?
Okay, let me back up just a second to the other question, because the same thing sort of happened here about really healthy. They're really healthy. You're not describing healthy people. The brain runs the body. It's just that you don't see the external effects of dementia until stage 6 of the disease. And then the person's body begins to dramatically be affected by the disease. So your loved ones are not healthy. They have a terminal brain disease. It's just that you don't see the effects on the physical part until stage 6. So on the other person, behavioral variant FTD, the FTD group are the 5th most common group of dementias. Behavioral variant FTD is rare, very challenging for that person, very challenging for their family. Again, you can stage them on the FTD staging tool. Again, I would go to the FTD website for information. You can also go on YouTube to University of California, San Francisco Medical School, and you can watch everything from a 30-second tutorial on swallowing. And this would be good for both the person with the PPA as well as behavioral variant FTD. And you can see everything from a 30-second tutorial on swallowing to a 3-hour mini medical conference that you would be able to understand. So there's other information together there that would help you, I think, get through this. I'm not sure I got all of that question answered.
I think they were just wondering in terms of how quickly it seemed to come on, if that's common.
Oh, that's the other thing that doesn't make sense. Because behavioral variant FTD doesn't tend to have hallucination behavior of people in their house, but Lewy body dementia has behavior of seeing people in their house. And a person with Lewy bodies, because they have fluctuating cognition, because the disease works differently, could literally appear to the family to have suddenly changed overnight. Whereas somebody with behavioral variant FTD, you would have been noticing odd behaviors that had been occurring for quite a while. And the things would be odd around the house. There would be strange foods, too many of one food. This is the dementia where the person begins to fixate on a food and will eat gallons of that ice cream. I've seen a man who was eating pounds of raw sugar a day. And when he ran out of sugar, he'd go to the store and buy more sugar. So, kind of on the cusp there of which dementia you're dealing with. Were they able to get a scan or anything on your loved one? Or I guess we know it was a question.
Oh, right. Yes, all negative.
Okay, so you can't say that the person's showing massive frontal lobe damage, but there's a scan saying everything's negative. So was there an MRI done or a CAT scan done that you know of?
Both.
Okay, so you can send me a picture of the summary page, and I will call you back tomorrow and tell you what it actually says, and maybe we can get you started down the road that way because you're sort of giving me two different pieces of information that don't match.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay,
Can you
so
give out
Nicole,
your email
yeah.
real quick?
Oh no, just if you email me, you're just going to annoy me. Just send me a text message to 254-216-3668. That's my real phone right here. It's the only phone, and I really will answer you back. So 254-216-3668. If you start to bother me, I'll send you a bill. But no, I'm happy to help you. Just take a picture of the summary page and text it over to me, and we'll get it figured out for you.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I did
Yeah.
put the phone number in the chat, so in case
All right.
they didn't get it.
I write it on every McDonald's bathroom wall myself.
All right. There's one more question. My mom has FTD. Is it true that typical dementia drugs like Namenda and Aricept can speed up or cause a quicker decline for them?
It actually depends on the person. Now, there are physicians that don't believe you should give Aricept to a person with FTD, that there's not enough research that shows it has any good. Namenda is used because when the dementia process begins, it begins to damage a thing in the brain called the blood-brain barrier, which is how the brain cleans itself at night and gets rid of toxins and broken dead things. And the brain with dementia begins to increase glutamate production, which is a chemical in your brain. And what Namenda does is it allows the brain to continue to get rid of glutamate, because if you have too much glutamate in the brain dies. And so Namenda is usually kept in the person's medication until the end of life. Whereas if they were using Aricept, Aricept is usually withdrawn in stage 6 of the disease because there's no longer enough healthy brain tissue for it to be effective.
Thank you. I did not know that.
Yep.
Oh, this is a good one. Would you speak to alcohol and dementia? My husband would like alcohol more now. Wait, I'm sorry. My husband likes alcohol more now, and I've seen this happen a lot with dementia people. Is it a normal craving? I think with folks who have dementia.
Well, interestingly enough, Nicole, in behavioral variant FTD people, there becomes a sudden interest in alcohol and drinking to the point that they end up in rehab. I've actually had patients who were diagnosed with behavioral variant FTD only because they'd gone to rehab 3 times and a neurologist happened to walk through. And but they do weird things with the alcohol. This particular gentleman was just drinking hand over fist and had never drank like that. but he was hiding his bottles under the pillow in the bed he shared with his wife. So it wasn't the best hiding spot. Behavioral variant people also tend to get diagnosed after they get picked up for shoplifting. And the most common thing they shoplift is alcohol. And it's not like, ooh, let me go steal some alcohol. It's they walk in a grocery store, there's a bottle of wine, they unscrew the wine and drink it and then set it back down without ever realizing what they just did because of brain damage. And then part of it is a craving for sugar that begins to happen. And after the pandemic, we certainly saw an upshoot in drinking among people with dementia that had never drank before. I mean, I've now run into multiple pastors that had never drank until after the pandemic. And they began drinking during the pandemic. And that's when dementia really came through for them, that the family could see finally that there was something going on. So, alcohol takes on a much different effect on a person with dementia because their brain's already damaged. Alcohol is, its technical name is neurotoxin because it actually means brain poison. There are specific forms of dementia that are caused by alcoholism, Wernicke or Korsakoff's, or the person can have both Wernicke and Korsakoff's. So there are dementias that come from that. But you're not talking, Nicole, about developing Wernicke or Korsakoff's because you had a glass of wine. You're talking about drinking a bottle of whiskey, case of beer, and a bottle of whiskey a day. You're talking about somebody who's really taking in a lot of alcohol and doing it for decades. So it tends to be a long-term disease process. So you certainly do have alcoholism in people with dementia. They don't realize how much they're drinking. They forgot they already had a glass. Somebody called me last week and their person would have a drink. She only had one drink a day. And then at 7, she would go, it's time for my drink. And she'd go have her drink. And then Nicole at 8, she'd go, oh, time for my drink. She'd go have her drink. And the daughter said after spending one night with her mom, she said she went through 2 bottles of wine. And on each glass, the woman argued, no, this is my first glass. So we've used things like fake wine, the wine-free, alcohol-free wines, alcohol-free beers. 20 years ago, you had like 2 kinds of beer and 2 kinds of wine. Now there are all kinds. There's even alcohol-free hard liquor, which makes no sense to me at all. But tequila, whiskey, scotch, gin, vodka can all be bought alcohol-free now. So we've had people with success of switching those out. And then the other thing is, if people with dementia think they're drinking something with alcohol, they will act drunk. And that is a behavior that we're not quite sure, other than that it's just socialization. They're supposed to be having a good time, so they're having a good time. So you do see some odd behaviors with dementias and drinking. But alcoholism, a sudden ontake, is a sign of behavioral variant FTD. It is one of the features of it, but it could also be an Alzheimer's feature.
Okay, good. Well, that was all the questions in the chat.
Well, great questions.
Very good questions. I'm wondering, there was one more from our, oh, hold on, I spoke too soon. Do you know where you could purchase the non-alcohol hard liquor? Just at any store?
I've seen it. I've now seen it at a Whole Foods. So I don't know. I've been told it's at a liquor store, but I saw somebody ask the liquor store guy, and I thought he was just going to beat him in the head because he was a liquor store. So he wasn't happy about this. Jamie just said Total Wines. So I think we're going to be able to find it, and I think you'd be able to order it online as well. BevMo. I don't know what BevMo is, but yay.
I think Jamie's on the Google. Okay.
And remember, Nicole, the part about drinking, because there was for years a big conflict about happy hour, because they were serving alcohol in happy hour to people with dementia in the 70s and 80s. And, you increase their falls, you increase damage, you just something we don't want to do. So when it began to be moved that we use non-alcoholic drinks, we found out that the residents still acted giddy. And so what we begin to think of is we're not giving them alcohol. what we begin to realize is it's the socialization of the happy hour, that you have a funny little glass that has a screwy straw in it and has a piece of fruit in it. It's the socialization, the music and the snacks, and being around others, that's what the concept of drinking and dementia is. It's not actually having alcohol, it's the socialization.
Mhm. That makes sense.
And then they still act drunk. So it's always fun.
If, and tell me if this is too big of a question for our last question, but I wanted to kind of end on maybe some hopeful or positive news. Are you aware of any advances in dementia research or treatments that you could share with the group?
No, I mean, there you've got, for example, Texas has 4 medical schools, and all medical schools are researching it. And medical schools around the country and around the world are researching it. There is a lot of sharing of information, and people are working on all different aspects. Honestly, every year they sort of let you know that, yeah, we're very, very close to having something. And they probably are getting very, very close to having things. But the best thing, Nicole, really does come back to exercise, diet, stress, sleep, no smoking, no tobacco, and socialization. And that is really how you have to look at aging. And if we do those things, then this doesn't become something I have to worry about or you have to worry about. It's a matter of us really looking at what we put into our bodies and how we use our bodies. And then for most family caregivers, how many of you would just do anything to have a good night's sleep? And sleep becomes more challenging as you age because of pain or other age related issues. But you got to take care of sleep, you got to take care of stress, no tobacco, no alcohol, don't get addicted to opiates. Want to make sure we put that in there. And then, use your body. We evolved to walk 8 to 20 miles a day. That's why that generation is so strong. The staff are always, especially young staff caregivers just starting their careers, they're always shocked at how strong people with dementia are. They walked everywhere. They ate a different diet than you did and I did. I didn't have McDonald's, Nicole, until I was a senior in high school on a track meet trip. We know now that a 6-month-old baby recognizes the golden arches. That's just scary. So watch your diet. Alcohol, got to be careful with. It is something we all have to watch. And try to take care of yourself.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Dr. Tam. Very
thank
good.
y'all.
Oh, there was just a thank you in there. Thank you for all the information. I thought this was very helpful. I hope everybody else did as well. Lots of good questions. Thank you again to everybody who did send in questions ahead of time or put questions in the chat. We really appreciate it. And we will see Dr. Tam back in April.
All right.
With
I'm
us.
excited about that. Yeah.
Yep. And then we will be getting out to everybody invitation for next month. We're going to continue with these each month. We are going to have Dr. Tam on a quarterly basis this year, but we're kind of weaving in some other folks as well. So Great. We appreciate everything you've done, Dr. Tam, and we will look forward to seeing you again, if not in person prior, for some of our events, but on here in April.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Y'all take care. Everybody take care of yourself. You're all doing a great job. You really, really are. Thanks, Nicole.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.